My name is Lena Hart, and the story I'm about to tell you isn't something I share easily, not because it's traumatic or because it makes for a wild confession, but because it forced me to look straight at myself. It taught me how quickly loneliness can disguise itself as connection, and how thin the line is between a harmless moment and a life-changing mistake. That Friday morning, my husband, Miles, left before sunrise for a 2-day conference in Seattle. We lived in a modest coastal bungalow north of Santa Cruz, the kind with wide windows that made the whole place glow even on cloudy days. You could hear the ocean from almost every room, steady waves, gulls crying, wind pushing through the dune grass. It was beautiful. It was also quiet in a way that sometimes made your thoughts feel louder than they should. Miles loved his work. I loved that he had something that lit him up. I supported his travel, his long calls, his deadlines, because that's what partners do. Still, every time the front door shut behind him, the house felt like it inhaled and forgot how to exhale until he returned. We also had a guest staying with us that month, Theo Mercer. He was 23, newly graduated, and in California for a short internship at a local design firm. Theo wasn't family. He wasn't even someone I'd known long. He was the son of one of Miles's old friends, and Miles had offered him our spare room to help him get settled. Theo was polite, quiet, and easy to live with, the kind of best who washed his own dishes and never turned the TV up too loud. That morning, with Miles gone and the weekend stretched open, I decided to keep busy. I put on an old jazz station, soft horns and brushed drums, then started cleaning. I wore a loose white t-shirt and denim shorts, the same comfortable outfit I always used for housework. I opened windows, shook out rugs, wiped salt dust from the glass. The ocean breeze rolled through the rooms, cool and clean, like it was trying to reset everything. I was in the living room working on the tall bookshelf near the window, the one Miles insisted we keep curated, as if the right mix of books and souvenirs could prove we had a meaningful life. I climbed onto a small folding step stool so I could reach the top shelf. I was stretching to straighten a framed photo when I felt it. That sudden awareness, the unmistakable sensation of someone standing behind you. I turned, and there was Theo, leaning against the doorway. His hair was rumpled like he'd just woken up, and his face still held that half-asleep softness people have before the day fully claims them. "Morning," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Did I wake you with the music?" He shook his head. "No, it's nice, actually." His eyes stayed on me a little too long, not in a crude way, not in a way that set off alarms, more like he was studying something he didn't know he was allowed to look at. I kept my hands busy, pretending not to notice. "Any plans today?" Theo wandered in and dropped onto the sofa, elbows on his knees. "Not really. I might go for a run later, maybe work on my portfolio." "That's smart. Keep momentum while you're here." We talked lightly for a minute about his internship, the projects he'd been assigned, how expensive groceries were near the coast. Normal conversation, safe conversation. Then I reached again for the photo frame, and the step stool shifted. It wasn't dramatic, just a small wobble, but it was enough. My balance went out under me, and the room tilted for half a second, the kind of slip where your brain has time to register what's happening, but your body can't correct fast enough. "Lena!" Theo moved fast, really fast. His hands caught me around the waist, firm and steady, and he held me upright before my foot even touched the ground again. The stool clattered sideways. My heart jumped so hard it felt like it punched the air out of my lungs. We froze like that. Me in his grip, him braced to keep me from falling. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. I could feel his breath. I could feel the tension in his arms, not rough, not possessive, just instinctive, protective. And because the house was so quiet, because the music was low and the ocean kept its steady rhythm, that moment became louder than it had any right to be. My eyes lifted to his. His expression wasn't casual anymore. It wasn't sleepy. It was focused, startled, and undeniably tender. I forced a small laugh, the kind people use to break a spell. Wow, good timing. I almost went down. Theo didn't smile right away. Yeah, he said, but it came out like he meant something else. I stepped out of his hold and smoothed the hem of my shirt, as if wrinkled cotton could restore order. Thank you, I added, quieter. He nodded once, still watching me. I turned away and picked up the fallen stool, making a show of being practical. I guess I should retire this thing. It's trying to kill me. A hint of a smile finally appeared on his face. Probably. I walked to the sofa and sat, partly to steady my legs, and partly because the room suddenly felt too bright. Theo sat too, leaving a polite distance between us, but the space felt charged anyway, like it wasn't empty at all. Outside, sunlight poured across the water, turning the ocean into hammered glass. Inside, the jazz kept playing like nothing had happened. I stared at my hands. Mornings are my favorite, I said, mostly to fill the silence. Yeah, especially when it's calm like this. I glanced at him. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes weren't. They held that same steady attention, as if he was trying to decide whether he should say something or whether saying it would ruin everything. Then he did. Lena, can I be honest? My stomach tightened. I should have stood up. I should have changed the subject. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I said, okay. He swallowed. Sometimes it feels like you're the only person in this house who actually sees me, not just as some kid crashing in a spare room. I let out a slow breath. Theo. He cut in quickly, and his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I know, I'm not trying to make it weird. But it already was. Because the truth was, I had seen him, not on purpose, not as a plan. It happened the way it always happens, through small moments, shared coffee, quick jokes, the way he listened when I talked, like my words didn't have to compete with a phone screen or a calendar reminder, the way he thanked me when I made dinner, like it mattered. And the deeper truth, the one I didn't want to admit, was that I had been hungry for that kind of attention. Not because Miles was cruel or absent in some dramatic way. He wasn't. He loved me. But love can still leave gaps if you stop tending it. Theo shifted, his hands clasped together as if he was trying to physically hold himself back. I keep thinking about you, he said, barely a whisper. I hate that I do. My pulse thudded in my throat. Theo, this isn't... I know what it is. It's wrong timing, wrong everything. The air felt thick. My face warmed, not with desire exactly, but with the shock of being wanted when I hadn't realized how much I missed it. I stared at him, and I made a choice I'm still not proud of. I didn't leave the room. I didn't call a friend. I didn't put distance between us. I just sat there, letting the moment exist. My hand moved without permission, barely a motion, just a light touch against his forearm, as if to calm him or to calm myself. The second I did it, I knew it was a mistake. Theo inhaled sharply, like that small contact had said more than any sentence could say. He covered my hand with his, gentle and uncertain. Lena, he murmured, and there was a plea in it, not for something physical, at least not yet, more like he was asking me not to deny what was happening. My mind screamed that this was a door I could never open, that even touching him like this was a betrayal, that I was standing on the edge of something that would wreck a home I had spent years building. But my body didn't move. Theo leaned closer, slow, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His forehead nearly touched mine, and for a split second, I thought, this is the last moment before everything changes. And then, the front door opened. Lena, I'm back. Miles's voice rang through the house, bright and casual, the way it always sounded when he came home with good news. Everything inside me went cold. Theo jerked back like he'd been burned. My hand snapped into my lap. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might actually feel it in my teeth. Miles walked in with a duffel bag over one shoulder, smiling like the world was simple.
Flight got canceled, he said, still grinning. They put me on an earlier one, so surprise. I stood up too fast. Miles, hi! He crossed the room and hugged me, warm and familiar, pressing a quick kiss to my temple. I missed you, he said. I held on to him like a lifeline because in that second, I needed something steady, something real. Over his shoulder, I saw Theo standing near the window, hands shoved into his pockets, his face carefully blank. But his eyes were full of panic and shame. Miles pulled back and noticed him. "Oh, Theo, hey, you're up?" Theo forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Miles, welcome back." Miles clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "Thanks. Sorry for the early return. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." My throat tightened. "No," I said too quickly. "Just talking." Miles laughed. "Good. I'm making coffee. I feel like I've been inside airports for a year." He disappeared into the kitchen, still humming with that easy energy that comes from a trip ending early. The second he was out of sight, the living room became unbearably quiet. I turned to Theo and lowered my voice. "This can't happen," I said. My words shook, even though I tried to keep them firm. "Do you understand me?" Theo's jaw flexed as if he was biting back 1,000 things. "I didn't plan it," he said, eyes shining with frustration. "I swear." "I don't care if you planned it," I whispered. "We stop right now. No more moments, no more conversations like that." He looked like I'd hit him. Then he nodded once. "Okay." Miles returned with mugs, cheerful and oblivious. "You two look like someone died," he joked, setting the coffee down. "Everything okay?" I forced a laugh that sounded foreign in my own mouth. "We're fine," I said. "I just almost fell off a stool earlier. Adrenaline." Miles winced. "Seriously? You okay?" "I'm okay." Theo stared out at the ocean as if he could disappear into it, and that was the beginning of the heaviest week of my life. After that morning, the house filled with a quiet pressure, like a storm trying not to break. I went through the motions: laundry, dishes, dinner, polite questions about Miles's work. I smiled at the right times. I even laughed. But every pause between sounds felt dangerous. Theo avoided me when Miles was around. When we crossed paths in the hallway or the kitchen, he kept his eyes on the floor or on whatever he was holding. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wouldn't notice, and the look carried everything we weren't saying. Guilt, confusion, and that aching, reckless tenderness that had no business existing in my home. One afternoon, Miles went out to meet friends to watch a game. The house exhaled the moment his car pulled away. I stepped into the backyard with a watering can, telling myself I needed air, telling myself I was just checking on the roses. The late sunlight angled through the trees, turning the leaves bright at the edges. The ocean wind carried salt and cold. I heard footsteps on the deck behind me, and I didn't have to turn to know who it was. "I'm not trying to corner you," he said quietly. "I just needed to talk." I kept watering, though my hand trembled enough that the stream wavered. "We already talked." He moved closer, careful, like approaching a skittish animal. "No, we didn't. We panicked." I finally faced him. Up close, he looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept, like the past week had been a loop in his head. "You're avoiding me," he said. "Yes," I admitted, because lying was pointless, because it's the only way I know how to keep this from getting worse. Theo's throat worked as he swallowed. "It's already in my head," he said. "I replay it, the way you looked at me, the way you—" He stopped himself, eyes closing for a second as if he was in pain. "I can't pretend I didn't feel it." I hugged the watering can to my body like armor. "Feeling something isn't the same as acting on it." His eyes snapped to mine. "But you felt it too." The words landed like a stone. I could have denied it. I could have performed indignation. I could have made him the only guilty one. Instead, I exhaled and told the truth, at least the part that mattered. "Yes," I said, "I felt something, and that's why we have to be smarter than our feelings." Theo's face tightened as he folded. So, what do we do? I blinked hard, fighting the sting in my eyes. We protect Miles, I said. We protect what he thinks this house is, and we protect who we want to be when we look back on this. Theo's shoulders sagged. You're right, he said, but his voice cracked like he hated the sentence. If you care about him, then you stop. You put distance where it needs to be. You focus on your life, your career, your future. And my voice wavered, I remember my vows. Theo nodded slowly like he was forcing acceptance into place. Then without another word, he turned and walked inside. I stood alone among the roses, the sky fading toward evening, the ocean doing what it always does, moving forward, wave after wave, as if time didn't care what people ruined. That night, I couldn't sleep. Miles was beside me, breathing evenly, one arm thrown across the bed in that familiar way that used to make me feel safe without question. I stared at the ceiling and realized something I didn't want to realize. I had come close to breaking my life without even meaning to. The next morning, I decided I couldn't live inside silent tension anymore. Avoidance wasn't a solution. It was just a pause before a bigger mistake. I found Theo in the kitchen, sitting at the table with his laptop open, not typing, just staring at the screen like it was a wall. He looked up when I entered, already braced for impact. I sat across from him and folded my hands, not to look composed, but to keep them shaking. Theo, I said, calm but unwavering, we need a plan, not feelings, a plan. He nodded, eyes dull with fatigue. Okay. We're going to reset the boundaries, I said. No more private talks, no more lingering. If Miles leaves the room, you leave the room. If we're alone in the house, you go work at a cafe or the library, and we keep it respectful until your internship ends. His throat worked as he swallowed. And after? After, you move forward, I said. You take whatever opportunity comes next. You build your life somewhere that doesn't include this. His gaze dropped to the table. I've never felt something this intense, he admitted. It made me feel stupid. It made me feel irresponsible, I said softly. So we don't feed it. We let it shrink. His eyes lifted glossy but controlled. Does Miles know? The question cut through me. No, I said, and I don't intend to hurt him with a confession that would only transfer my guilt onto his shoulders. But I am going to do better, starting now. Theo nodded once, slower this time. I'll do better too. I reached across the table and touched his hand, brief, deliberate, and final. Not romantic, not lingering, a human gesture that said goodbye to the version of this story that could have destroyed us. Then I pulled back. We sat in silence for a moment, and for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like a cliff edge. It felt like closure beginning. A few days later, Theo got an email that changed everything. A firm in Manhattan, one he'd applied to months ago, offered him a placement he'd been dreaming about. Longer term, better pay, bigger projects, a real step into the world he wanted. He told us over dinner. Miles lit up instantly, pride pouring off him. That's huge, he said, and stood to hug Theo like he was family. I knew you had it in you. Theo managed a genuine smile. Thanks, I didn't think I'd get it. I smiled too, and my chest filled with a strange mix of relief and grief. Relief that distance was arriving like a rescue boat. Grief because part of me hated that something I never asked for felt so intoxicating. The week Theo packed, the house grew lighter, like the air itself was finally allowed to move again. We stayed polite, normal. We made small talk in front of Miles. We kept space without making it obvious. On the morning Theo left, the sky was pale and clear. His car was loaded. The ocean looked calm, almost kind. At the front door, I gave him a brief hug, careful, appropriate, and steady. Take care of yourself, I whispered. Theo nodded, meeting my eyes with a softness that didn't ask for anything anymore. You too, Lena, he said, and thank you for stopping it. I watched his car roll down the coastal road until it disappeared around the bend. For a long time, I stood there listening to